The sound of war drums echoed through the misty hills as ancient warriors stood ready, their eyes filled with fear and fury. But beyond the battle cries, something larger was awakening beneath the layers of blood and broken bones. An island was learning how to become a nation. The earliest story of the land we now call the United Kingdom was not written in peace, but carved in survival. Tribes known as Celts roamed its wild landscapes, building small settlements and worshipping the sun, the rivers, and the spirits of the earth. But soon foreign sails touched its shores, bringing change that would never be reversed. The Romans arrived with iron shields and stone roads, forcing their order upon the free tribes. They built walls, towns, and systems, but even they could not erase the soul of the land. When they left, silence followed, and that silence was quickly filled by new invaders. The Saxons came from across the sea, followed by the Angles and Jutes, each wave crashing harder than the last. Kingdoms rose and fell as fast as the tides, until a new enemy emerged, one more brutal and fearless than before. The Vikings, their ships cut through the sea like knives, their axes split. Both flesh and fire, they raided and ruled with a hunger that knew no mercy. Yet even in the darkness, a light began to flicker in the southern kingdom of Wessex. A leader rose. His name was Alfred, and he would not kneel. He pushed back, not just with swords, but with ideas, with learning and law. He dreamed of a united land, a single voice, speaking through many tongues. But dreams do not come true without pain, and the island was not ready, still divided, still bleeding. Years turned into centuries, and from those scars came something strange, a sense of belonging, a sense that the land could be more than war, that it could become home. Then came the Normans riding from France, led by William, who claimed a crown soaked in ambition. The Battle of Hastings changed everything, and for the first time the island was ruled from one center. One king, one law, but even then unity was an illusion. The North rebelled, the Welsh resisted, and the Scots stood proud. The English crown was strong, but the people were not yet one. The conquest brought castles and fear, but it also brought structure, and slowly the roots of government began to dig into the soil. This was no longer just a story of kings. It was becoming a story of power, of how to hold it, how to share it, and how to question it. And though many could not see it yet, the island had started a journey, a long, uncertain journey, from a land of tribes and thrones to something greater, a united kingdom in the making. The crown glittered above all, yet cracks were forming beneath it. While kings feasted, rebellions simmered, and while palaces grew, villages starved. The people watched the throne with awe, but also with questions. Power had long flowed from royalty down, but now whispers of resistance drifted upward, and it all began with a simple document in the year of reckoning. The Magna Carta was signed under pressure and fear, a parchment that limited the king and gave breath to the idea that law could be greater than rule. It was not freedom for all, but it was a beginning, and that beginning would echo across the centuries. Kings still wore crowns, but they wore them under watchful eyes. Barons demanded say, and parliaments began to rise across the channel. Wars raged and crusades called. But the real war was now within the island itself. The English crown tried to stretch its reach into Wales, Scotland, and Ireland, forging a union not of peace, but of pressure. The Welsh resisted and were conquered. The Scots stood proud and battled fiercely, while Ireland was forced to endure centuries of conflict and change. Yet even with fire and fear, the dream of a united land remained. The Tudor dynasty brought drama and dominance under Henry and Elizabeth. Thrones were shaken and churches broken, as England split from Rome, forging its own path, but also sowing seeds of unrest. With every change in faith, with every shift in power, people asked, who decides, who leads, who speaks for the land? And when the Stuarts followed the Tudors, those questions turned into fury. Kings claimed divine right, while Parliament claimed the voice of the people. The tension exploded into a civil war, a war not of borders, but of beliefs. When the dust settled, the king had fallen, and for the first time, the axe fell on a royal neck. Power had shifted forever. What followed was an experiment in rule. Without royalty, the Commonwealth led by Cromwell tried to govern with might, but found the crown not so easy to replace. So the monarchy returned, but changed, weakened, made to share power and answer to voices beyond its walls. Parliament now stood not beside the throne, but across from it, challenging it, shaping it. And through this balance, a new system slowly formed, one where the land was ruled not just by birth, but by debate. The Act of Union came in time, forging Great Britain from England, and Scotland, and later bringing in Ireland to form the United Kingdom, but even this union was filled with unrest. Many Irish voices never stopped calling for home rule, and many Scottish hearts still held their own identity close. The land was connected, but the people were still finding common ground. Yet through conflict and compromise, the foundation was set not just for a kingdom, but for a nation. Smoke rose above rooftops, where once only trees had stood. The fields that once fed kings now fed machines, and the hum of engines replaced the silence of dawn. The Industrial Revolution was not just a change in work, it was a change in identity. People who once lived by rivers now lived by rails. Children who once played in the mud now worked with coal and iron. The United Kingdom was transforming not just in wealth, but in will for centuries. The crown had ruled, but now the people began to speak louder, their hands calloused from labor, their voices rising in protest. Factories boomed, but so did hunger and disease, and in that suffering came questions. Why do so few rule? Why do so many suffer? As workers marched and unions formed, the nation began to bend, not break. Women demanded the vote, the poor demanded rights, and the rulers had to listen. No longer could power rest in castles. It had to answer to the streets, and as steamships crossed oceans, the empire grew, but so did the coast. Colonies far from home whispered of freedom and resistance, and at home the divide between rich and poor stretched thin. The world wars came like storms, tearing through cities and hearts, but in the ashes, something new began to bloom. When bombs fell, people held hands, not flags. The nation stood as one, and that unity gave birth to courage and change. The National Health Service was born, a promise to heal the sick, not the rich or the powerful, but everyone. The welfare state rose like a bridge over pain, giving shelter to the broken and hope to the forgotten. The empire shrank, but the soul of the nation grew, no longer defined by how much land it ruled, but by how it treated its own. And yet even unity is never complete. Voices in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland asked for respect, for recognition, not to break apart, but to be seen. And the answer came not in denial, but in devolution. More power shared, more voices heard. The kingdom was learning that strength came not from control, but from connection. The monarchy, too, changed, no longer feared, but followed by choice, a symbol, not a sword. And in the 21st century, the journey continued. New challenges rose from within and beyond borders, but the roots were strong. For this was no longer a land of silent subjects. It was a home of speaking citizens, where a vote had more weight than a crown, and the past stood not as a chain, but as a guide. The United Kingdom was never a perfect nation, but it had become a real one, shaped by battle, built by belief, and held together not by force but by the hope that tomorrow can always be better than today.